actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.
How to start collecting action figures, a series of guides from Action Figure Resource. Looking after your figures. Most people either hide their figures away in a dark cupboard, possibly sealed in an attic or basement, or put them on display in the most prominent place available, leaving them at the mercy of the elements. Consider these items you have brought home akin to art, painting, sculpture, photography. They are there to give us pleasure, to look at, to do something to our emotions. If we're lucky, they're also there to appreciate in value. We are effectively playing the same game as art collectors, so we need to look at their practices to inform upon our own. Action figures, by and large, have no function, unlike a television or a car, but like those things, they require upkeep and care. There are several ways to protect your figures that are neither expensive nor difficult and will only take a little of your time. Follow these simple procedures to protect your figures, especially your loose figures, and they should stay in excellent condition. Investing in action figures until recently was often considered a waste of time and money, but with increasing demand in the hobby and the record prices that some action figures have been selling for, particularly since the growth of the internet and auction sites, many people have had to reconsider this assumption. So what should you do to protect your action figures? First and foremost, if this applies, you should remove any batteries when they're not in use or if they're being stored. It never ceases to amaze me the number of people who forget this simple yet important procedure, and as a result their valuable figures have been ruined by leaking battery acid. Some people even remove the batteries after each time they interact with the figure, just to be on the safe side. Before you store your figures, you should also give them a good clean to get rid of any dirt or grime that may damage them in storage, but be careful, this can be a difficult procedure, more on that in a bit. Avoid handling them. Your hands and fingers have a lot of natural grease and oils which may be good for your skin, but are unfortunately far from healthy for your action figures. These oils and greases will cause your action figures to yellow and grow spotty if handled too often. If you wish to keep them in the best condition for a prolonged period, then when or if you handle them, use gloves or a cloth if possible, or pick them up using the shell of a carded figure or the base. In other words, have as little direct contact with your action figure as possible. Avoid direct sunlight. One of the biggest problems and most common amongst collectors is damage caused by the UV rays from direct sunlight. This can be disastrous for your action figures, as it will cause them to become discoloured, brittle and cracked over time. Even if your action figures are still carded, there's still the danger of them getting damaged, and the carding will also become discoloured, as well as the plastic shell becoming yellow and brittle. The humidity of the environment is another important factor to take into account when displaying or storing your action figures. The more humid the environment, then the more moisture will be present in the air. I'll discuss how this affects your action figures in more detail further on when we look at storage. For now, let's just say that it is best to keep them in an ambient temperature and humidity, not too hot or cold, and certainly not too wet. Removing price tags. Hopefully if you bought your auction figure from a reputable dealer, the price tag will be on the plastic shell, making it easier to remove with warm water. Don't use hot water as it may cause damage. Unfortunately, many of the national chain stores put the price tags on the backing card, making it difficult to remove without tearing the card. If your figure has a particularly stubborn tag, you could try using something called Goo Gone, but this must be applied carefully and correctly, or you will still risk harm to the packaging. Storing and displaying your figures. Taking care of, protecting and storing your action figures correctly is of paramount importance if you wish them to keep their value, whether it's sentimental or financial. Loose figures are a lot easier to store than carded figures, but carded figures are better protected. Thus both have benefits and weaknesses when it comes to keeping them safe over long periods. One of the most important factors to take into account when storing your action figures are their value. There are many companies now, both on and off the internet, that supply various ways to store and protect your action figures. If you bought your figures for financial gain only, then storing them somewhere cool, dark and dry, away from the elements and human contact is perfectly logical. But if you bought them to enjoy, then it makes far more sense to keep them to hand and on display. However, the huge factor that affects all serious figure collectors is that unless your house is enormous and your family are very supportive of your collecting, it is hard to find display space for everything. A solution that many use is a rotation system that lets you store a percentage of your figures and keep the rest out on display, switching them out every few weeks or months to ensure that you always have something interesting and new to look at and nothing is mothballed forever. Storage and display options. There are several alternatives to choose from depending on why you want to store them, how long for, and their value. Sealed storage containers. These are for action figures at the high end of the market. By this I mean action figures that are worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Sealed containers are usually used by grading companies to ensure that the items in question are kept in their graded condition. They're generally made from a tough, clear plastic, often with UV protection, and vacuum sealed and airtight. The biggest disadvantage with sealed storage containers are the cost and space. It will usually cost $10 to $15 each to store your figures using this method, so save it for your most valuable pieces. Display cases. Most display cases have the dual function of both storing and displaying your action figures, and are often stackable for added flexibility. They are most often made from an acrylic plastic, making them strong, durable, and hard-wearing. There are many companies that offer these in various styles, shapes, and sizes. Many will hold 6 or more figures together, providing an excellent way to present numerous action figures at the same time, as well as protecting them from both physical and environmental damage. Another big advantage is that they allow you simple access for periodical cleaning and maintenance of your action figures. Plastic shell cases. One of the most practical solutions that offers excellent protection. These are affordable and can be used for both loose and carded figures. They resemble the manufacturer's packaging but are made from a more durable and harder plastic than most blister packs and are big enough to accommodate loose or carded action figures. They are available in a variety of sizes and shapes, some specifically made to hold certain manufacturers' carded action figures, whereas others are of a more standard size and shape. Plastic shells offer you a more affordable solution for keeping your figures in mint condition. They have most of the advantages of storing your action figures in a sealed container, but are a lot cheaper and are more readily available. But as with sealed containers, it can still be expensive. If you have a lot of action figures, and storage space can also be a problem, as they increase the space taken up by each figure. Resealable containers. These have several advantages. They are cheap, generally hard-wearing, available in a variety of shapes and sizes, and they're easy to store and access. Generally, everyday resealable food containers are ideal for storing your action figures, especially the more popular brands of containers such as Tupperware. Most of these types of containers are made to be strong and hard-wearing, as well as being cheap, easy to store, and offering your action figures good protection. But be careful. If you're using large containers to store more than one action figure, make sure you wrap each figure with a cloth or bubble wrap to help protect them and prevent them rubbing against each other and causing damage. Food containers are also useful for storing loose accessories, but make sure you label each container clearly so you know what it contains. You could even color code them. One of the drawbacks is opacity, by which I mean it's simply harder to actually see your action figure inside a Tupperware container. As being designed to hold food and not art, most are frosted. Again, over time the space taken up can become problematic, and as a long-term solution, food containers are of equivocal expense to dedicated figure cases, so you might as well invest in something designed to show off your collectibles and not keep your sandwiches fresh. On that note, resealable bags. These are probably the cheapest, easiest and most convenient way of storing your action figures, but they don't offer them much protection. Available in a variety of sizes and usually fairly strong, they are a godsend for storing inexpensive loose figures and accessories. They are great value and will keep each figure distinct and packaged with their accessories. In the past, I made the mistake of throwing all my Star Wars figures into a big plastic bag together. I was a child, of course, even when I was 21 it seems, but this is a terrible way to store them. They rub paint off each other, get arms and legs entangled, and occasionally even break bits off, and kiss goodbye to those delicate swords because they're getting bent and snapped. If you have a large collection of loose figures and aren't sure how to store them, invest in a few packets of zip seal bags. After sealing each figure away, you can then carefully stack them individually in a plastic packing crate, preferably with the lid, and they will be safe from harm. This will allow you to, at a later date, relatively simply find the figure you want without rooting through a toy box. However, if the figures you need to store are worth more than a couple of bucks each, then you would be advised to seek out alternative protection.
Important. Zip seal bags from the grocery store are meant for keeping spoilable food for a short period of time, not action figures for long periods. You will find if you leave loose figures in regular bags for many years that the plastic will start to degrade and they will actually decay. This is because regular sandwich bags actually have a fairly acidic inner coating. It's okay for brief periods, but if you want to store loose figures, you will have to seek out resealable, acid-free bags, specifically labelled as such. They cost a little more, but it beats having to replace your entire collection after placing your trust in bags meant for food.
What to check before storing your figures? Now you know how to protect and store your action figures, what will you do with them and where will you store them? There are 3 very important factors to consider when deciding on where. 1 is sunlight. The amount of direct sunlight your figures are exposed to is a very important factor. Direct exposure to the sun's UV rays will cause your figures to discolor, fade, spot, bubble, and the plastic will become brittle and dry, making them very fragile and easy to break. The second factor is humidity. If you store your action figures somewhere with a high humidity and thus lots of moisture, they will rot and corrode. But on the other hand, too little humidity can cause dry rot and cracking, as well as damaging any rubber parts. And the third is temperature. Similar situation to humidity here. If the air is too cold, your action figure will become brittle, and if it's too hot, they will become warped and disfigured. So where is the best place? If you don't intend on displaying your figure, find a place to store them away from the sun that isn't too dark, too dry, too damp, too hot, or too cold. Basements and attics are often at least one of these extremes. And this is a shame, as their sole purpose is often storage, and they usually contain the biggest unused spaces in the house. If you're lucky enough to have a climate-controlled version of one of these, then go for it. Otherwise, consider a closet or a cupboard in the main part of the house. This is an ideal place, as the temperature and environment is generally ambient and consistent, and they will be shut away from the damaging UV rays of the sunlight. Also, unless your house itself is incredibly humid, in which case you have other issues as a collector to deal with, the moisture levels will be fine too. Another advantage of using a cupboard or closet in the house is that they'll be easily accessible for periodical cleaning and maintenance. Try to make it a closet or a cupboard that only you use, or they may get damaged by others trying to get something else. So don't store it next to the potato chips, but you probably knew that anyway. And don't forget to clearly mark or label all the 4 sides as well as the top, any boxes or containers that you use with what's inside. Otherwise, you'll find yourself reopening everything in a bid to find a specific figure. Cleaning your figures. When was the last time you cleaned any of your figures? Is your Luke Skywalker in Hoth gear looking a little brown around the edges? Is your Stormtrooper looking more grey than white? Is your G.I. Joe's hair looking dirty, greasy and matted? Would you like to have them looking new and pristine again? Whether your figures have been displayed carefully in a cabinet, on a shelf, a desk, or just lying loose in a large storage box, the chances are that at some point, if not now, you'll need to give them a clean. But how do you clean them without the risk of damaging them, and without having to call in that old man from Toy Story 2? How to get rid of surface dust. If your figures only have a fine layer of regular household dust, the easier way to clean them is to use canned air, the type that you can usually buy for cleaning computers. They usually also come with a straw that fits into the nozzle for spraying into all those little nooks and crannies. You can also use a feather duster, although generally these are too cumbersome and not really small enough to use on your average figure. You also run the risk of covering the figure in feathers. A better alternative is to use regular dusting cloths or electrostatic dusters, which you can find in most household stores or in the household cleaning section of your local supermarket or Walmart. Getting rid of stubborn stains. For the more stubborn stains, dirt or grease marks, first soak your figure in warm water. I'll say again, not hot or boiling, as this will damage your figure and any stickers or decals on it will come straight off. One of the best cleaning solutions to use with warm water are effervescent denture tablets. Add 1 or 2 of these to a bowl or glass of warm water and then wait for the tablets to begin bubbling. At this point, place your action figure in the water. The reaction will scrub the figures clean. When the bubbles have finished, remove your action figure and carefully dry it. Cleaning small, complex objects are exactly what these tablets are designed to do. If you don't have any effervescent denture tablets available, then normal household dishwashing liquid will do, but leave your action figure to soak for a few hours before attempting to clean it, and be sure to rinse it off in absolutely clean water to remove all traces of residue. Again, if there are decals present, this is inadvisable because warm soapy water will detach them. Early transformers, for example, usually covered in stickers, will need dry cleaning, which I'll talk about in a minute. For the more difficult stains or harder to reach places on your action figure, a soft bristled toothbrush or cotton bud are ideal to gently rub the surface of your figure and remove any remaining dust or dirt. Use a soft sponge or an all-purpose cloth to clean it, but do not scrub or use any abrasive materials as they may damage. Instead of wiping, you should gently dab the figure with the cloth to get rid of excess water. An easier way to dry your figures would be to let them air dry with a hairdryer set to blow on cold. If the figure has electric wiring or uses batteries in it, then by the same token as figures with decals on them, you must surface clean only. How to dry clean or surface clean a figure. For the battery and sticker figures, this is the best method of cleaning. It still involves water, but you are not immersing them, instead only using a minimal amount which is applied directly. You will need a jar or a small bowl with some warm soapy water, a soft-haired toothbrush, cotton buds, pipe cleaners and a small soft sponge. First, very lightly soak your sponge in your bowl of water, wringing off any excess, and then carefully wipe rather than scrub your action figure with the sponge, being careful to avoid any areas with stickers, decals or electrical parts. For smaller or more difficult to reach areas, use the cotton buds. They are excellent for this. The pipe cleaners are also good for getting into difficult to reach areas such as the inside of a gun barrel and other such places. A toothbrush is also good for general cleaning purposes and getting rid of more stubborn stains, but again, be careful not to scrub your figures or they may scratch or scuff. Use a gentle brushing movement from side to side. If the stickers and decals need cleaning, use a very slightly damp cloth and gently dab them to remove any dust or dirt, and then dry them immediately afterwards or they'll start peeling. Ink stains can be removed by using isopropyl, also known as rubbing alcohol, carefully dabbed or very gently rubbed over the area, but always make sure you rinse off the alcohol afterwards, as leaving it on would discolour the plastic. Be very careful when using any form of chemicals on your figure, as certain plastics will melt, bubble or blister with the use of some chemicals. If in doubt, seek sound advice or just use warm soapy water. If your figure has had candle wax spilt on it, then this can be removed by freezing the action figure for half an hour or by using a small amount of lighter fluid on it, but again ensure you rinse off afterwards. Doing your figure's laundry. If your action figure has fabric clothes, then these will also need occasional cleaning. Generally, if you follow the same rules as washing real clothes, you should be alright, but the easiest and safest way is to soak them in cold water to prevent shrinkage and running colours with a mild detergent such as baby shampoo or dish soap. Again, remember to rinse off detergents and soaps with clean water afterwards. For particularly stubborn stains, use a normal laundry pre-wash stain treatment and carefully rub it into the material with a soft-headed toothbrush. If the stain still remains, then redo the above process, taking care not to damage the fabric. It is best not to wring or scrub the material for that reason. Then either air dry them or dab them with a dry cloth or sponge in order to soak up the excess water. And finally, how to wash hair. If your figure has flocked or rooted rather than moulded hair, this can also be washed much like real hair, but obviously you will need to be much gentler with it. Any ordinary baby shampoo is the best to use, applied gently with either a sponge or a soft brush. The key thing to remember is not to rub it vigorously like you would do your own hair, or your figure will end up bald. To dry the hair, squeeze, pat or press the hair or leave it to air dry. For greasy, matted hair, use hot water and a fabric softener, which will help to get out any tangles or matting. If it needs remaking, you can use a doll's hairbrush to restyle it. However, in some extreme circumstances, you may wish to completely reroot or reflock the hair. There are several companies on the internet who offer this service and will often offer a custom designed flocking for you. We hope you have enjoyed this multi-part guide on how to start collecting and maintaining action figures. Be back soon for more reviews, guides and more at Action Figure Resource.
actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.